Going on YouTube, Cloverbell's here back with another Scarlet Violet video, and today we're going to be looking at some of the new Pokemon that were discussed and shown in the Pokemon Presents earlier this morning. So if you missed it, if you were sleeping, Pokemon dropped some news on the DLC that's going to be released later in September. By the way, we do have a release date now. It is September 13th, so mark your calendars for the first DLC release. And one of the new options that we're going to be getting is Archaludon that you see on the screen over here. So this is again on the Scarlet Violet Pokemon website. Basically, this is now the new evolution of Duraludon. A much needed evolution, I would say, to Duraludon, right? If we just think back to how it was used in Sword and Shield, right? Duraludon. But basically, again, we don't know too much about some of these new Pokemon other than like the typing and maybe a signature move, but we don't really know stats. But we know a couple of things, right? And these are just like first look ideas. But basically with Archaludon, being an evolution of Duraludon, the key signature thing that it gets is listed over here. So basically, it gets this new move called Electro Shot, right? And if we just read the description here, it says, with this electric type special move, Archaludon gathers vast quantities of energy and fires off a high voltage bolt of electricity under rainy weather conditions. And I'm going to highlight that. Under rainy weather conditions, Archaludon can immediately fire off this attack without having to spend time charging it up, right? So imagine something like, again, Solar Beam, Meteor Beam. I'm just thinking like, as if rain didn't get enough buffs, right? Now we get this thing that can also do well in rain. So, Pokemon has this idea that rain is just not good and it needs more buffs, right? So that's why, they made the genies have 100% accurate moves in rain now, and now we get this thing that can do something in rain. It's going to be interesting. If this is what it's getting, Electroshot, then I'm making the petition that Meteor Beam should get the same benefit that this move gets, but under like sand, right? It just makes sense to me, okay? But anyway, so this will be interesting. So we already can see like some combinations that can be used in rain teams where you can put this thing and now it gets a good signature move where it's probably going to be some electric type move, I would imagine, maybe a steel move where it's just like a one-turn thing and just gets to blast this thing, right? So, go figure. But, there's some other ideas now with Duraludon. Now you get an evolution, right? And so we're going to put this on the screen here. And just looking at its stats, right? Thinking back to like Sword and Shield, even though that was a Dynamax era, base HP 70, 115 defense. This is pretty good. 120 special attack, not too bad. And then the not so great speed def and the middling speed tier, right? So some ideas here, of course, Assault Vest was a thing, right? Just to give a nice little bit of an added boost in speed def, right? And then from there, you got to do a little bit of damage with this 120 special attack. But then some other ideas, were just simply like Life Orb over here. And then you just did a little bit more damage in Dynamax. This was often also paired with Whimsicott, right? Which is also coming back in the DLC. And not only do you get Tailwind support, that's Tail Glow. All right, Tailwind. But now you also get something like Fate Tears, where this was also helping Duraludon try and do a little bit more damage. But all in all, Duraludon just needed a lot more support in Sword and Shield. It wasn't really super great once Series 7 rolled around. Once you had like Urshifu, Landorus, and then you had the big Ubers, it just didn't really do anything anymore. Dialga became the premier Steel Dragon type. So, but now that you have an evolution, now all of a sudden you can maybe consider running Eviolite, right? This is what people are talking about. Like maybe now we can start to make use of Duraludon here. And then you're probably just considering like Iron Defense and Body Press. I know a lot of these moves seem illegal at the moment, but that's because it's just not in the game yet. Because now what you can do is, just start going for, well, actually not even, right? But just the Eviolite, just the stats in general, right? 115 just becomes now like 173, and then the speed def becomes like 75, right? So that's not terrible in that sense, right? In terms of Eviolite Duraludon, you'll probably just run something like Flash Cannon, and then maybe something like Draco Meteor, right? And then 2 moves here, right? So just whatever it can get. We don't know officially in terms of like what it gets access to, but I would imagine it does get access to these 2 moves, right? It's trademark specialty for what you will, right? And then at the same time, now you're just reading like this. If you just go back to Archaludon, it does get stamina / sturdy. I don't know about sturdy, but it does get stamina, which I would imagine that, you know, this move Stalwart becomes a hidden ability, right? And then Stalwart was a really good ability in the sense that, you know, you can pretty much just ignore redirection support, right? So if you just read it, Pokemon's moves cannot be redirected to a different target by any effect. So that was pretty good. That was a nice, good ability, right? In that sense. But then now you get a nice little tool to play with, right? Now you get stamina, so now you get these defense buffs, and now you can probably just run the iron defense body press stuff, right? So you might even just see that. So maybe something like Hisui and Gudra kind of playstyle, right? Where it just goes for that kind of idea. Okay, so I mean, it might be a better Hisui and Gudra. Time will tell. We don't know what these stats are, but that's probably another way of playing it. But again, you can also probably just imagine this like on these raiding teams with either like a Politoad, which is definitely coming back in the DLC. You might even just see Tailwind, Tornadus with like Rain Dance, for an example, right? I think we're still getting like Pelipper shenanigans here. So time will tell with what kind of rain setter can be paired with this, not this Duraludon, but this Archaludon. But, you know, these are some of the initial ideas. Either you just put it on some kind of rain team where it just gets an accurate move, a hard-hitting accurate move, or, you know, you might just use this Eviolite Duraludon. Now, I don't think this is going to be the premier set, right? You know, people said the same thing about, like, Eviolite Bisharp, right? Just look at this, right? Eviolite Bisharp, people were all hyping this up back in when, you know, King Gambit was announced, but then who's using Eviolite Bisharp? Nobody. Right, because it's just not that good. The King Gambit option is just a better Pokemon over something like Bisharp. So I don't think people will, you know, be using it as much. I know they're gonna try it in the beginning. Of course, they're gonna be trying it, right? Because we might as well. But in the end, I still think the final evolution of this Pokemon, this Archaludon, will be the preferred choice. But again, time will tell. We don't know its complete stats as of yet. We don't even know the rest of its move pool. So time will tell, but you know, this is a nice welcome addition to Duraludon for sure, at least in terms of its evolution line. So I'm looking forward to using it, all right? And time will tell if this is actually going to be like meta defining or meta breaking, right? But let me know what you think of Archaludon and in terms of how you might try and use it. But in terms of like what we know so far, we only know just a little bit because, you know, it's just like a presents idea kind of thing, right? But let's look at some of the other options that were released from the Pokemon Presents news. Okay, next up we have two new Paradox Pokemon that's going to be released. We have the Raikou version, which is now called Raging Bolt, and we have Cobalion, now also called Ironcrown, right? And these are the art forms of both. Looks like we're still sticking with the long neck giraffe dinosaur theme, right? It's kind of like Fergraph thing. So, you know, I don't know. Mixed results. You know, some people like the original Raikou form. They're like, what did they do to my Raikou? Right? And then now we have this robot version of Cobalion, which I kind of like. It looks kind of cool, you know, in all honesty. But in terms of like what we know, what it can do in terms of stats or moves, we don't know a whole lot. But what I might suggest, or what I think we can know, is just by looking at what was released already in terms of those lines. So if we look at what was released in April in terms of Walking Wake and Iron Leaves. So Walking Wake, you know, along with Suicune, you know, coming from Suicune, you know, it's photosynthesis, right? Which means it's going to get a boost in the sun, okay? And that is my initial thought process over here with the Raging Bolt over here. It's same idea. It's probably going to be photosynthesis. It's probably going to get some boost in the sun. So sun teams now get a boost with this guy, okay? And then at the same time, Iron Crown is probably comparable with Iron Leaves here. So it's probably going to get some kind of boost in the electric terrain, right? Which isn't really used all that much. So it's probably going to be a booster energy Pokemon more so than the Walking Wake lines with, you know, in terms of the sun idea, right? So who's to say? You know, it depends how this is going to go. But in terms of like what's going to be coming forward, I would imagine Entei follows the same suite as, you know, Suicune and Raikou. It's probably going to get a nice boost in the sun, which could be good. You know, it is a fire type. And the same thing would probably be the case with Terrakion, right? The Iron Robot version, it's probably going to also get a boost in the electric terrain, but we don't really know a whole lot. But these two moves, in terms of like Walking Wake, Hydro Steam was pretty good. During the sun, it's gonna get a boost. A water move boost in the sun, that was pretty cool. Iron Leaves, I don't know about this typing Grass Psychic, but Psyblades was interesting. It's gonna get a nice boost there, but who knows what these two Pokemon are gonna get. They didn't quite announce the signature moves just yet, so we'll see what it brings. But in terms of the weather, these are photosynthesis quark drive mons, so we'll see. But definitely people are going to try it. In terms of stats, I hope they're good. One would imagine, they're both relatively fast, right? If we just look at like Cobalion here, just in terms of like its raw stats, so like it had a great speed stat, defense was pretty good, attack not so great. So hopefully we can get something there in terms of like that idea. But then if we look at Raikou, same thing. Very, very fast Pokemon, right? Base 115, great special attacker, good special defense. Defense not all that great, so maybe we can get something a little bit more different. But in terms of like the speeds, these are pretty good. And we just look at Walking Wake, and then Iron Leaves, they were also relatively fast. So who's to say? Maybe these are also going to be like relatively fast options as well. As long as they're faster than base speed 100, that's all I really care about. So let me know what you think of the designs of Raging Bolt and Ironcrown. We don't know a whole lot yet. Hopefully Cerebi and Pokemon Showdown will update accordingly. But in terms of design-wise, not too bad. I don't know about this long neck thing, but I've seen worse. I think this is not too bad, okay? But time will tell as far as like how viable they will be in VGC. Okay, next up we have Dipplin here, which is basically this new evolution of Applin. So now we have 3 evolutions that we have for, this little guy. We have Appleton, we have Flapple, and now we got Dipplin, right? This candied apple idea. So basically, it's actually got some interesting ideas here. So if we just take a look at its new move here, right? It says Syrup Bomb. One move that Dipplin can learn, Syrup Bomb, is a grass-type special attack that causes an explosion of syrup. This move coats the target in syrup and causes its speed stat to lower each turn for 3 turns. Oh my goodness. So 3 turns of like quote unquote speed control where its speed stat is lowering by a stage. That's interesting. I don't think we've ever had a move like that before. So we'll see how viable this gets to be in VGC, but definitely, that's a pretty cool move. And then what's also pretty cool is this ability, Super Sweet Syrup. So basically, appears for the first time in part 1. So the scent of syrup spreads across the battlefield, lowering the evasiveness of opposing Pokemon. So right away, that seems like something that can be paired with a Pokemon that has a move that can hit really hard, but has a little bit of an accuracy problem. And I can think of 2 legends that have historically had this problem, right? I can think of Groudon, okay, with Precipice Blades, and I can think of course, Kyogre. I know it gets Water Spout, but again, Origin Pulse was the thing that also it got that was also a secondary water move. So I can also maybe kind of see some combinations with these two, in initial glance. I don't know if it'll be any good. It just all depends on what that thing's stats is, right? But speed control, right? Groudon and Kyogre, they can definitely appreciate that because, 90 base speed is not so great, not terrible, but it needs a little bit more. So who knows? It could be a good support option. And then just like Rock Slide and Heat Wave users, right? So imagine something like Landorus going for Rock Slide or Tyranitar going for Rock Slide. And then you can even imagine Heat Wave users like Chiyu or even something like a Heatran. These are all like big Heat Wave users. Okay, even something like, what is it, Draco Meteor, that's another one. So really it just depends who appreciates the speed control and who appreciates the evasiveness drop. You can maybe even pair this with something like Hypnosis. That would be very, very annoying if you could pair this with something like Hypnosis and then, just pretty much hit it all the time, or like Sleep Powder shenanigans. So who knows, okay? But these are just some like initial thoughts I can already see, being paired with this Pokemon Dipplin, right? But that's really all we know. We don't know the stats. We don't really know the rest of its move pool. I would imagine it's a special attacker, seeing as the Syrup Bomb is a special attack. So, time will tell. Just like with the other 2 new Paradox options, these are just like first looks. So we'll know more as we get closer to the DLC, or as Showdown and Cerebi will update their sites accordingly, and then we'll discuss more, right? And you know, with the DLC, we're getting a lot more new options, right? Or older options, I would say. We're getting Metagross back, we're getting Milotic, we're getting Whimsicott back. You know, we still have the 3 new royal Pokemon that we have to discuss eventually in separate videos. But it's an exciting time. You know, the clock is ticking on the DLC, and we'll see what the new format brings out and see what is actually eligible to be able to use, right? Who knows, right? Because I thought in Regulation D we would be able to use Walking Wake, all right? But turns out we can't even use Walking Wake or Iron Leaves, so who knows? But yeah, let me know what you think of the new options presented in the DLC, right? And then from here, who knows? But until then, we still got Regulation D to plow through. All right, we'll be back with another video in the next one, guys. Peace out and have a good one.